Hi, and welcome to Module 4. The good news is you're officially halfway through the course, so congratulations. In this module, we're going to be considering quantitative methodologies, and for some of you, this is very comfortable territory. For others, it definitely isn't, and I fit in the second category, so I'll put that up front right at the very beginning of this video. Some of you will probably be teaching me. However, I'm happy to say that the readings in this module will add to your understandings of quantitative research, if you're like me, and enable us to be a more knowledgeable consumer of quantitative research. So in Module 4, you will be reading Creswell and Guterman, who consider collecting quantitative data in Chapter 5 and 6, in Chapter 5, and then explore analyzing and interpreting data in Chapter 6. Gerard gives us an example of how one might go about thinking through the key concepts in the analysis of survey data. The videos will reinforce Gerard's chapter, and for those of us for whom statistics is unfamiliar territory, they'll be helpful. So all of these readings are going to be very helpful in thinking through what do we mean by quantitative analysis? How is it that we can think that through? And whether we do this kind of research or not, this is the kind of research that we encounter often in our professional work as we look at various issues that may arise in educational settings. Much of what is put out by boards of education, for example, ministries of education, and so on, are often couched in quantitative language. So all of this will be helpful to you. In terms of the assignments for Module 4, there will be only one, the forum for discussion group. So that's kind of good news too. As usual, you will have a question to respond to in the forum with the expectation that you will draw from the literature in both your initial response and responses to your colleagues. In planning for upcoming assignments in Modules 5 and 6, as there are no assignments other than the forum in this module, you may want to get a bit of a leap ahead on the annotated bibliography. That is the second part of the annotated bibliography, which also includes a synthesis that happens in Module 5. There's no need really to think about the assignment in Module 6 yet, but you might want to get a jump a bit on identifying the readings that you're going to be using in Module 5. And what that will do then is give you extra time for doing the synthesis, which in and of itself is a fairly complex enterprise. I'll be giving you some assistance with that and giving you some ideas for it and that sort of thing. But it's still a pretty complex way to bring together all of the threads that you've been looking at in the various readings and so on. Okay. So let's think about what is quantitative research. Well, we already know quite a bit from Creswell and Guterman, as well as some of its philosophical underpinnings from Guba and Lincoln. We've learned that it is systematic, as any kind of research is, but it is organized in a particular way and provides a highly systematic approach to the gathering and analysis of data. Second, it's empirical. That is, it's based on observable phenomena. So we're talking about social phenomena only as they can be demonstrated by what can be seen and quantified. Third, because it depends on quantifiable data in its analysis, researchers use statistical, mathematical, or computational techniques or methods, which your readings will discuss. It also begins with a hypothesis that is either confirmed or disconfirmed in the research process. As we've learned, this is a different approach to qualitative research, in that qualitative research either comes to a hypothesis, as in grounded theory, or its goal is understanding a question that has been raised and the research helps us to understand it, but it cannot be confirmed in the same way that quantitative research is able to do. So the analysis occurs through a theoretical lens. 5, it's objective in the sense that the researcher tries through various strategies to separate him or herself from the process in which they are engaged. Arguably, this is always an incomplete process, but as much as is possible using accepted strategies, blind studies, and so on, the researcher attempts to separate themselves from the phenomenon under examination. For example, Creswell and Guterman talk about developing questions for surveys and so on. but some would argue that such a process can never be entirely removed from the beliefs and values of the researcher, or the research team, or the funder, or what have you. So while objectivity is the goal, and many strategies enable objective practices of a kind, it is arguably never absolute. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. 6, it examines relationships between variables, and I'll be talking about that more in a minute. So what is quantitative research and how does it help us understand social phenomena? Well, all of these characteristics of quantitative research are what it is and are also how it helps us to understand various phenomena in education and other social contexts. The readings and videos provide a look at some of the issues that need to be addressed in statistical analysis. For example, Creswell and Guterman point out in Chapter 6 that there are 2 main types of statistical analysis, descriptive and inferential statistics. So what are descriptive and inferential statistics that are key tools in quantitative research? Well, I'd like to look at a video that will introduce us to both, and you'll find some references to this as well in the other videos that you'll be watching. This is just very short, and I hope that it will be clarifying and you'll enjoy it.
Because this is the first lecture, we're going to be starting off with some of the most basic concepts, and right now I'm going to teach you about descriptive and inferential statistics. So first of all, what is statistics? Well, statistics is the science of collecting, organizing, and analyzing data. Data being facts or pieces of information. Now I'm going to give you 3 examples of data, like the ages of students in your statistics class, or the genders of the last 8 people to walk by, or even 5 randomly measured IQ scores. Basically, any information you can collect is data, and then you'll eventually do math with that or something. So when people talk about statistics, they're usually talking about 2 main divisions. There's descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. Descriptive statistics consist of organizing and summarizing data, while inferential statistics consist of using the data you've measured to form conclusions, usually about other data. Now I'm going to give you an example of these 2 things. So let's say there are 20 statistics classes at your university, and you've collected the ages of the students in one class. And right below I have, 15 ages that you have hypothetically collected from different people in your class. A descriptive question that could be asked about this data is, what's the most common age of student in your statistics class? Which, in this case would be 18 because you have the most 18s out of everything. And an inferential question that could be asked about this data is, are the ages of the students in this classroom similar to what you would expect in a normal statistics class at this university? See that the first one is just asking us to describe data, while the second one is asking an additional question about that data. Now, the data you get will be drawn from either populations or samples, usually samples, but I'm going to explain both. Now, the population is the group that you're interested in studying, and the sample is a subset of that population. Basically, your sample comes from the population, as shown in the diagram below. So let's say you want to find the average GPA of a student at your university. Your university has 20,000 students, and you randomly select 100 of them and ask them what their GPA is. In this case, the group that you're interested in studying, your population, is that 20,000 students, and your sample is that smaller group of 100 students that you've taken from the population. And for the first video, that's all I really want to talk about. I want you to have a strong idea of what statistics is and, a vague idea of what data is. Know the difference between descriptive and inferential statistics, and know the difference between populations and samples, but also how they relate to one another. Basically, that samples come from populations.
Okay, so now we have a basic understanding of descriptive and inferential statistics in statistical analysis. So let's look at these concepts in a simple study I conducted several years ago in Alberta. I was on the Gender and Diversity Committee with the ATA, and we have become interested in exploring a persistent question in education. How can we better understand the gender disparities in the teaching profession? We did an extensive literature review and found that the issue was highly complex, and statistics for the gender distribution in teaching remained remarkably stable. Somewhere around 70 to 80% women and 20 to 30% men. I want to add a caveat here that we are talking about male presenting and female presenting teachers. And in this study, we did not account for alternative gender representation. It was done a few years ago. So my study took as its population beginning teachers in Alberta. And the reason we chose that population was because we felt that beginning teachers had a better idea of why they had gone into the profession and why some others might not have, or what were some of the challenges that they faced in going into the profession. So that was the larger population. And the sample came from beginning teachers attending a conference for beginning teachers. Most of those attending participated in the survey, and we collected 2 samples for female beginning teachers and male beginning teachers. Okay, so Creswell makes the statement that when you are comparing 2 or more groups or relate 2 or more variables, that your analysis becomes by necessity inferential. So I'll take him at his word, and certainly I was able to make inferences by looking at variables in relation to the 2 gendered groups within this sample in my study. And I must say, by the way, that I didn't do the statistical analysis. I don't have those kind of skills, but I did get someone else to do it. So using my descriptive data about males and females in teaching in Alberta, for example, how does my population compare to the general percentages for males and females in the wider teaching community? As an aside, at the time of this study, the economy was booming and the number of males was down in relation to the total population. But research tells us that the number of males rises when the economy offers fewer alternatives to males. So it was a little bit below what we generally see. Generally, we see between 20 and 30 for males, and with this population, we saw 19% males and 81% females, but it was pretty close. In thinking about this study then, my larger question was, why are there more female than male teachers in Alberta? I chose to tease out some of the aspects of this question, the variables, using a survey in which respondents answered several questions about aspects of that larger question. So one of the questions was, what is the career trajectory of male and female teachers in Alberta? I used the population of beginning teachers, the sample, which I've already discussed. The descriptive statistics were male beginning teachers, 19%, female beginning teachers, 81%. So I could answer those descriptive kinds of questions. And my hypothesis was males enter teaching at different life stages than females, which then leads to other kinds of questions that we explored as well. And I won't get into the whole study because we'd be here for a while, but just to give you an idea of what these different kinds of statistics look like. So that was my hypothesis. So let's look at one of the stats around when a choice was made to become a teacher, in which we asked when participants in the population chose to become a teacher, and then distributed them by gender. That is, when they first made the decision to become a teacher. So as you'll see, there's a really disproportionate number of girls, of women that decided to become teachers when they were in elementary school. Far, far greater number than males. It's relatively even at the secondary school level. And then interestingly, at the undergraduate degree level, there's a far larger number of males that decide than females, primarily, I think, because so many more females had already made that decision. So it's much more evenly distributed for females. And then for others, those people who had gone out and had a career and then decided to leave that career and come back to, or not come back to, but to take their teaching degree and get into teaching, it's again more or less even. So do they confirm or disconfirm the hypothesis? And the hypothesis, if you remember, was males enter teaching at different life stages than females. And that was one of the hypotheses. And so this seems to confirm that in fact is the case, because 1, 2, to some degree, the third a little bit, but because these are so disproportionate, it would suggest that at least we're on the right track. But we'd have to do a whole lot of other statistical analysis to make that judgment. But, you know, just looking at the can we infer that? Yes, we probably could, and then we need to confirm that with other tests that you'll read about in your readings. So the question then becomes, well, what if I know nothing about statistics? As I said, I've certainly fallen that category, and as I said, my secret, I had someone who was proficient in statistical analysis do this study. Because I didn't take a course in statistics in my undergrad, and a very bad course during my PhD studies where we learned about how to do a survey, but in terms of the actual statistical analysis of a survey, we had a very, very poor discussion about that. In fact, it was almost non-existent. So I felt like I came away from that course not having, with a good mark, believe it or not, but coming away with not having the kind of knowledge that I wished that I had. But I feel that I need at least a general awareness of the processes, the methods used in quantitative research. And this module's readings really have helped me with that, and I hope that they help you as well, for those of you who don't have that kind of background. I need to know some of the most common terms so that I can read a quantitative study and at least understand it enough to make a judgment about its validity so that I can become a knowledgeable consumer, at least, of research, even though I'll probably never do another quantitative study myself. Well, certainly at this point in my career, I won't. Because it's necessary as a researcher and often as a professional educator as well, since so many policy changes and discussions about education are premised on quantitative studies to have those kinds of skills. And even if your knowledge is limited, it's important to know about and use reliable sources so that you can read a study and trust its conclusions, even if you don't read the whole methods section of the paper. So I hope this little discussion is helpful to you. And as you read the papers, and if you have any questions, I will attempt to answer them, or we'll put them to the group, and those who have a better understanding can help us with that as well. So this will be a module where we'll definitely be working together to come to a greater knowledge of what it means to do quantitative research. So I wish you well, and again, as I said, please feel free to get in touch with me at any time if you have any questions. All the best.